Hi everyone, it's Mr. Cook. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, but it's summer, so I can. Um, I just saw the Odyssey in the movie theater, the new one by Christopher Nolan, and it was good, but the text of it just didn't jump out to me. I felt like it was almost offensively elementary. Everything else was great, just the text, the language was terrible. Um, One of the most interesting translations that I kind of love, it's hard to get through, but I do sort of love it, is the first English translation. It was done in 1616 by a man named George Chapman, and I want to read a bit of it for you. This is Homer's The Odyssey, the first book. The man, O Muse, informed that many a way wound with his wisdom to his wished stay, that wandered wondrous far when he the town of sacred Troy had sacked and shivered down, the cities of a world of nations, with all their manners, minds, and fashions. He saw and knew at sea, felt many woes, much care sustained to save from overthrows, himself and friends in their retreat for home. But so their fates he could not overcome, though much he thirsted it, O men unwise, they perished by their own impieties, that in their hunger's rapine would not shun the oxen of the lofty going sun, who therefore from their eyes, the day bereft of safe return, these acts in some part left, tell us as others deified seed of Jove. Now all the rest that austere death outstrove, at Troy's long siege at home safe anchored are, free from the malice both at sea and war. Only Ulysses is denied access to wife and home. The grace of goddesses, the reverend nymph Calypso, did detain him in her caves, past all the race of men, inflamed to make him her loved lord and spouse. And when the gods had destined that his house with Ithaca on her rough bosom bears, the point of time wrought out by ambient years, should be his haven, contention still extends her envy to him, even amongst his friends. All gods took pity on him, only he, that girds earth in the cincture of the sea, divine Ulysses ever did envy, that made the fixed point of his birth to fly. But he himself solemnized to retreat to the Aethops far dissundered in their seat, in two parts parted at the sun's descent, and underneath the golden orient, first and last of men, to enjoy their feast of bulls and lambs and hecatombs addressed, at which he sat, given over to delight. The other gods in heaven's supremest height were all in council met, to whom began the mighty Father both of God and man, discourse-inducing matter that inclined to wise Ulysses, calling to his mind faithful Aegisthus, who to death was done, the young Orestes, Agamemnon's son. His memory to the immortals then moved Jove thus deeply. Oh, how falsely men accuse us gods as authors of their ill, when by the bane their own bad lives instill, they suffer all the miseries of their states, past our inclinations and beyond their fates. Now Aegisthus past his fate did wed to wife of Agamemnon, and in dread to suffer death himself, to shun his ill, incurred it by the loose bent of his will, and slaughtering Atrides in retreat, which we foretold him would so hardly set to his murderous purpose, sending Mercury, that slaughtered Argus, or considerate spy, to give him this charge: do not wed his wife, not nor murder him, for thou shalt buy his life with ransom of thy own imposed on thee by his Orestes, when in him shall be Atrides' self renewed. But the prime of youth's spring put abroad in thirst to climb his haughty father's throne by his high axe. These words of Hermes wrought not into facts. Aegisthus' power, good counsel he despised, and to that good his ill is sacrificed. Pallas, whose eyes did sparkle like the skies, answered, O sire, supreme of deities, it just this past is fate, and had desert to warrant our infliction and convert. May all the pains such impious men inflict on innocent sufferers to revenge is strict, their own hearts ending, but that Ithacus, thus never meriting, should suffer thus. I deeply suffer his more pious mind divides him from these fortunes, though unkind, is piety to him, giving him a fate more suffering than the most unfortunate. So long kept friendless in a sea-girt soil, where the sea's navel is a sylvan isle, in which the goddess dwells that doth derive her birth from Atlas, who of all alive, the motion and the fashion doth command, with his wise mind, whose forces understand the inmost deeps and gulfs of all the sea, who for his skill of things superior stays the two steep columns that prop earth and heaven. His daughter 'tis who holds this homeless driven, still mourning with her evermore profuse of soft and winning speeches that abuse, and make so languishingly and possessed, with so remiss a mind her loved guest, manage the action of his way for home, where he, though in affection overcome, in judgment yet more longs to show his hope, his country's smoke leap from her chimney tops. In death asked in her arms, yet never shall thy loved heart be converted on his thrall. Austere Olympius, did not ever he in ample Troy thy altars gratify, and Grecians fleet make in thy offering swim? Jove, why still then burns thy wrath to him? The cloud assembler answered, What words fly, bold daughter, from thy pail of ivory? As if I ever could cast from my care divine Ulysses, who exceeds so far all men in wisdom, and so aft hath given to all the immortals throned in ample heaven so great and sacred gifts. But his decrees that holds the earth in with his nimble knees stand to Ulysses' longing so extreme, for taking from the god foe Polypheme his only eye a cyclop that excelled, and all other cyclops with whose burden swelled the nymph Thusha, the divine increase of Phorcys' seed, a great god of the seas. She mixed with Neptune in his hollow caves, and bore this cyclops to that god of waves. For those lost eye the earth shaker did not kill erring Ulysses, but reserves him still in life for more death. But use we our powers, and round about us cast these cares of ours, all to discover how we may prefer his wished retreat, and Neptune make forbear his stern eye to him, since no one God can, in spite of all, prevail but against a man. To this his answer made the grey-eyed maid, Supreme of rulers, since so well apaid, the blessed gods are all then now in thee to limit wise Ulysses' misery. And that you speak as you referred to me, prescription for the means in this sort be, their sacred order, let us now address with utmost speed our swift Agrilaces, to tell the nymph that bears the golden tresses in the isle Ogygia that 'tis our will she should not stay our loved Ulysses still, but suffer his return, and then will I to Ithaca to make his son apply his sire's inquest, the more infusing force into his soul, to summon the concourse of curled head Greeks to counsel and deter each wooer that hath been the slaughterer of his fat sheep and crooked-headed beeves, from more wrong to his mother and their leaves. Take in such terms as fit deserts go so great, to Sparta then and Pylos, where doth beat bright amethyst the flood and epitaph. To all that kingdom my advice shall send, the spirit advanced prince to the pious end of seeking his lost father, if he may receive report from fame where rests his stay, and make besides his own successive worth known to the world, and set in action forth This said, her winged shoes to her feet she tied, formed all of gold and all eternified. Eternified. Brilliant. That on the round earth or the sun sustained her ravished substance swift as gust of wind, then took her strong lance with steel made keen, great massy active, that whole hosts of men through all hero is conquerors if her ire their wrongs inflame, backed by so great a sire. Down from Olympus' tops she headlong dived, and swift as thought in Ithaca arrived, close as Ulysses' gate, in whose first court she made her stand, and for her breast's support leaned on her iron lance, her form impressed with Mentis' likeness, come as being as a guest. There found she those proud wooers that were then set on the ox hides that themselves had slain. Before the gates, and all at dice were playing, to them the heralds and the rest obeying, filled wine and water, some still as they played, and some for solemn supper state, purveyed with porous sponges cleansing tables, served with much rich feast, of which to all they curved. God-like Telemachus amongst them sat, grieved much in mind, and in his heart begat all representment of his absent sire, how come from far off parts his spirits would fire. With those proud wooers sight with slaughter parting, their bold concourse, and to himself converting the honors they usurped, his own commanding. In this discourse he first saw Pallas standing, unbidden entry uprose and addressed his pace right to her, angry that a guest should stand so long at gate, and coming near, her right hand took in his own her spear, and thus saluted: "Grace to your repair, fair guest, your welcome shall be likewise fair. Enter, and cheered with feast disclose the intent that caused your coming." This said, first he went, and Pallas followed. To a room they came, steep and of state, the javelin of the dame he set against a pillar vast and high, amidst a large and bright kept armory, which was beside with woods of lances graced, of his grave fathers. In a throne he placed the man-turned goddess, under which was spread the carpet rich and of deceitful thread, a footstool staying her feet, and by her chair another seat all garnished wondrous fair, to rest or sleep on in the day he set, far from the priests of wooers, lest at meat the noise they still made might offend his guests, disturbing him at banquet or at rest, even to his combat with that pride of theirs that kept no noble form in their affairs. And these he set afar from them, much the rather to question freely his absent father. A table fairly polished then was spread, on which a reverend officer sat bread, and other servitors all set sorts of meat, salads, and flesh, such as their haste could get, served with observance in, and then the sewer poured water from a great and golden ewer, that from their hands to silver cauldron ran, both washed and seated close the voiceful man, fetched cups of gold and set by them and round, whose cups with wine with all endeavour crowned, then rushed in the rude wooers themselves placed, the heralds water gave the maids in haste, served bread with baskets, when of all prepared, and set before them the bold wooers shared, their pages plying their cups past the rest. But lusty wooers must do more than feast, for now their hungers and their thirst allied, they called for songs and dances. Those, they said, were the ornaments of feast. The herald straight a harp carved full of artificial slate thrust into Phemius's a learned singer's hand, who till he much was urged on terms did stand, but after played and sung with all his art. Telemachus to Pallas then apart, his ear inclining close that none might hear, in this sort said: "My guest, exceeding dear, will you not sit incensed with what I say? These are all the cares these men take, feast and play, which easily they may use because they eat free and unpunished of another's meat, and of a man's whose white bones wasting lie in some far region with the incessancy of showers poured down upon them, lying ashore, or in the seas washed naked, who, if he wore those bones with flesh and life and industry, and all these might hear in Ithaca set eye on him returned, they all would wish to be either past other in clarity, of feet and knees, and not contented to exceed in golden garments, but his virtues feed the fate of ill death, nor is left to me the least hope of his life's recovery. No, not if any of the mortal race should tell me his return. The cheerful face of his returned day will never appear. But tell me, and let truth your witness bear, who and from whence you are, what city's birth, what parents, in what vessel set you forth, and with what mariners arrived you here. I cannot think you a foot passenger. Recount then to me all who teach me well, fit usage for your worth. And if it fell in chance now, first that you thus see us here, or in former passages you were my father's guest, for many men have been guests to my father, studious of men his sociable nature ever was. On him again the grey-eyed maid did pass this kind reply, I'll answer, passing true, all thou hast asked. My birth his honor drew from wise Anchialus. The name I bear is Mentis, the commanding islander of all the Tyaphans, studious in the art of navigation, having touched this part, with ship and men of purpose to maintain course through the dark seas to other languaged men. And Temesis sustains the city's name, for which my ship is bound, made known by fame, for which in brass which my occasions need, and therefore bring I shining steel instead, which their use wants, yet makes my vessel's freight, that near a ploughed field rides at anchor's weight. Apart this city in the harbour called Ruthrus, whose waves with Nias's woods are walled. They, sire, and I were ever mutual guests at either's house, still interchanging feasts. I glory in it. Ask when thou shalt see Laertes, the old hero, these of me. From the beginning he, men say no more, visits the city, but will needs deplore his son's believed loss in a private field, one old maid only at his hands to yield. Food to his life as oft as labour makes his old limbs faint, which, though he creeps, he takes along a fruitful plain set all with vines, which husbandman like through a king he proins. But now I come to be thy father's guest. I hear he wanders while these wooers feast, and the immortals prompt me at this hour. I'll tell thee out of a prophetic power, not as professed a prophet, nor clear seen at all times, which shall after chance to men. What I conceive for this time will be true. The gods' inflictions keep your sire from you. Divine Ulysses yet abides not dead, above earth, nor beneath, nor buried in any seas, as you did late conceive, but with the broad sea sieged is kept alive, within an isle by rude and upland men, that in his spite his passage home detain, yet long it shall be before he tread his country's dear earth, though solicited, and held from his return with iron chains, for he hath wit, a forge, a world of trains, and will of all be sure to make good for his return, so much relied upon. But tell me, and be true, art thou indeed so much a son, as to be said the seed of Ithacus himself? Exceeding much thy forehead and fair eyes at his form touch, for oftentimes we met as you and I meet at this hour, before he did apply his powers for Troy, when other Grecian states in hollow ships were his associates. But since that time mine eyes could never see renowned Ulysses, nor met his with me. The wise Telemachus again replied, You shall with all I know be satisfied. My mother certain says I am his son. I know not, nor was ever known by any child, the sure truth of his sire. But would my veins had took in living fire from some happy man rather than one wise whom age might see seized of what youth made prize. But he whoever of the mortal race is most unblessed, he holds my father's place. This, since you ask, I answer. She again, the gods sure did not make the future strain, both of thy race and days obscure to thee, since thou wert born so of Penelope. The style may by thy after acts be won, of so great sire the high undoubted son. Say truth in this then, what's the feasting here? What all this rout is all this nuptial cheer? Or else some friendly banquet made by thee? For here no shots are, where all sharers be. Past measure, contumeliously, this crew fare through the house, which should the ingenious view of any good or wise man come and find impiety seeing played in every kind, he could not but through every vein be moved. Again Telemachus, my guest much loved, since you demand and sift these sights so far, I grant 'twere fit a house so regular, rich and so faultless once in government, should still at all parts the same form present, that gave it glory while her lord was here. But now the gods that us displeasure bear have otherwise appointed and disgraced my father most of all the mortal race, for whom I could not mourn, so were he dead amongst his fellow captains slaughtered, by common enemies or in the hands of his kind friends, had ended his commands after he had egregiously bestowed his power and order in a war so vowed, and to his tomb all Greeks their grace had done, that to all ages he might leave his son immortal honor. But now harpies have digged in their gorges his abhorred grave, obscure and glorious death hath made his end, and me for glories to all grief contend, nor shall I any more mourn him alone. The gods have given me other cause of moan. For look, how many optimates remain in Salmos, or the shores Dulicane, shady Zacynthus, or how many bear rule in the rough brows of this island here. So many now my mother and this house at all parts make defamed and ruinous, and she her hateful nuptials nor denies, nor will despatch their importunities. Though she beholds them spoil still as they feast, all my free house yields the little rest of my dead sire in me perhaps intend to bring ere long to some untimely end. This Pallas sighed and answered, Oh, said she, absent Ulysses is much missed by thee, that on these shameless suitors he may lay his wreakful hand should he now come and stay in thy court's first gate, armed with helm and shield, and two such darts as I have seen him wield, when first I saw him in our Taphian court feasting and doing his desert's disport, when from Ephrus he returned by us, from Ilus, son of Centaur Memorus, to whom he travelled through the watery dreads, for bane to poison his sharp arrows' heads, that death but touched caused, which he would not give, because he feared the gods that ever live would plague such death with death, and yet their fear was to my father's bosom not so dear as was thy father's love. For what he sought my loving father found him to a thought. If such as then Ulysses might but meet, if these proud wooers all were at his feet, but instant dead men, and their nuptials would prove as bitter as their dying galls. But these things in the gods' knees are reposed, if his return shall see with wreck enclosed, these in his house, or he return no more. And therefore I advise thee to explore all ways thyself to set these wooers gone, to which end give me fit attention. Tomorrow into solemn council call the Greek heroes, and declare to all, the gods being witness what thy pleasure is, command to towns of their nativity these frontless wooers, if thy mother's mind stands to her second nuptial so inclined, return she to her royal father's towers, where the one of these may wed her, and their dowers make rich, and such as may consort with grace, so dear a daughter of so great a race. And thee I warn as well, if thou as well wilt hear and follow, take thy best built sail, with 20 oars manned, and haste inquire where the abode is of thy absent sire. If any can inform thee, or thine ear from Jove the fame of his retreat may hear. For chiefly Jove gives all that honors men to Pylos first. Be thy Adressian then, to godlike Nestor, thence to Sparta haste, to gold-locked Menelaus, who at last of all the brass-armed Greeks that sailed from Troy, and try from both these if thou canst enjoy news of thy sire's returned life anywhere, though sad thou sufferest in his search a year. If of his death thou hearest, return thou home, and to his mercy erect a tomb, performing parent rites of feast and game, pompous and such as best may fit his fame. And then thy mother a fit husband give, these past consider how mayest deprive of worthless life these wooers in thy house, by open force of projects ingenious. Things childish fit not thee, the art so no more. Hast thou not heard how all men did adore divine Orestes after he had slain Aegisthus, murdering by a treacherous train his famous father? Be then, my most loved, valiant and manly, every way approved as great as he. I see thy person fit, noble thy mind, and excellent thy wit, all given thee so to use and manage here, that even past death they may their memories bear. In meantime I'll descend to ship and men that much expect me. Be observant then of my advice, and careful to maintain in equal acts thy royal father's reign. Telemachus replied, you ope, fair guest, a friend's heart in your speech as well expressed, as might a father served to inform his son, all which sure placed have in my memory one. Abide yet, though your voyage calls away, that having bathed and dignified your stay with some more honor, you may yet beside delight your mind by being gratified with some rich present taken in your way, that as a jewel your respect may lay up in your treasury bestowed by be, as free friends use to guests of such degree. Detain me not, said she, so much inclined to haste my voyage. What thy loved mind commands to give at my return this way, bestow on me, that I directly may convey it home, which more of price to me, the more it asks my recompense to thee. This said, away grey-eyed Minerva flew, like to a mounting lark, and did endue his mind his with strength, boldness, and much more, made him his father long for than before. And weighing better who his guest might be, he stood amazed, and thought a deity was there descended, to whose will he framed his powers at all parts, when so inflamed amongst the wooers, who were silent, set to hear a poet sing the sad retreat the Greeks performed from Troy, which was from thence proclaimed by Pallas, pain of her offence. When which divine song was perceived to hear that mournful subject by the listening ear of wise Penelope, Icarus' seed, who from an upper room had given it heed, down she descended by a winding stair, not solely, but the state in her repair, two maids of honor made, and when this queen of women stooped so low she might be seen by all her wooers in the door aloof, entering the hall graced with a godly roof, she stood in shade of graceful veils implied about her beauties on either side. Her honored women, when to tears moved thus, she, child, the sacred singer, Phemius, you know a number more of these great deeds of gods and men, that are sacred seeds and proper subjects of a poet's song, and those due pleasures that to men belong. Beside these facts that furnish Troy's retreat, sing one of those to these that round your seat. They may with silence sit and taste their wine, but cease the song that, though these ears of mine, conveys deserved occasion to my heart of endless sorrows, of which the desert in me unmeasured is past all these men. So endless is the memory I retain, and so desertful is that memory of such a man as hath a dignity. So broad it spreads itself through all the pride of Greece and Argos. To the queen replied inspired Telemachus, why thus envies my mother him that fits societies with so much harmony to let him please his own mind in his will to honor these ingenious and first sort of men that do immediately from Jove retain. Their singing raptures are by Jove as well inspired with choice of what songs impel. Jove's will is freed in it, and therefore theirs, nor is this man to blame that the repairs the Greeks made homeward sings for his fresh muse. Men still most celebrate that sings most news, and therefore in his note your ears employed, for not Ulysses only lost Troy. There we go. Of the day of his return, but numbers more the deadly ruins of his fortune bore. Go you then in and take your work in hand, your web and distaff your maids command, to ply their fit work. Words to men are due, and those reproving counsels you pursue. And most to me of all men, since I bear the rule of all things that are managed here. She went amazed away, and in her heart laid up the wisdom Pallas did impart to her loved son, so lately turned again up to her chamber, and no more would reign in many councils. To her women she applied her sway, and to the wooers he began new orders, other spirits bewrayed than those in spite of which the wooers swayed, and whiles his mother's tears still washed her eyes, till grey Minerva did those tears surprise with timely sleep, and that her wooers did rouse rude tumult up through all the shady house, disposed to sleep because the widow was. Telemachus this new given spirit did pass on their old insolence. Ho! You that are my mother's wooers, much too high ye bear your petulant spirits, sit, and while ye may enjoy me in your banquets, see ye lay these loud notes down, nor do this man the wrong, because my mother hath disliked his song. To grace her interruption, 'tis a thing honest and honored too, to hear one sing numbers so like the gods in elegance, as this man flows in by the morn's first light. I'll call ye all before me in a court, that I may clearly banish your resort, with all your rudeness from these roofs of mine, away and elsewhere in your feasts combine. Consume your own goods, and make mutual feast at either's house. Or if ye still hold best, and for your honours more suffice to fill, to feed, to spoil, to unpunished still, on others finding spoil. But here I call the eternal gods to witness, if it fall in my wished reach once to be dealing wrecks, by Jove's high bounty, these your present checks to what I give in charge shall add more rains to my revenge hereafter, and the pains ye then must suffer shall pass all your pride, ever to see redressed or qualified. At this all bit their lips and did admire his words sent from him with much phrase and fire, which so much moved them that Antinous, Eupeithes' son, cried out, Telemachus, the gods! Let me try that again. His words sent from him with such praise and fire, which so much moved them that Antinous, Eupeithes' son, cried out, Telemachus, the gods, I think, have rapt thee to this height of elocution, and this grand conceit of self-ability. We all may pray that Jove's invest not in the kingdom sway thy forward forces, which I see put forth a hot ambition in thee for thy birth. Be not offended, he replied, if I shall say I would assume this empery, if Jove gave leave. You are not he that sings, the ruler of kingdoms is the worst of things. Nor is it ill at all to sway a throne. A man may quickly gain possession. Mighty riches make a wondrous prize set of his virtues, but the dignities that deck a king that are enough beside, in this superfluous isle that want no pride, to think them worthy of as young as I, and old as you are, an ascent so high, my thoughts affect not. Dead is he that held desert of virtue, to have so excelled. But of these turrets I will take on thee to be the absolute king and reign as free as did my father over all his hand, left here in this house slaves to my command. Eurymachus, the son of Polybus, to this made this reply: Telemachus, the girlond of this kingdom, let the knees of deity run for, but the faculties this house is seized of, and the turrets here thou shalt be lord of, nor shall any bear the least part off of all thou dost possess, as long as this land is no wilderness, nor ruled by outlaws, but give these their pass, and tell me, best of princes, who was he that guessed here so late, from whence, and what in any region boasted he his state, his race, his country? Brought he any news of thy returning father, or for dues of money to him made him fit repair? How suddenly he rushed into the air, nor would sustain to say and make him known, his port showed no debauched companion. He answered, the return of my loved sire is past all hope, and should rude fame inspire. From any place a flattering messenger, with news of his survival, he should bear. No least belief of my desperate love, which, if a sacred prophet should approve, called by my mother for her care's unrest, it should not move me. For my late fair guest, he was of old my father's touching here, from secret Topthos, and for name doth bear Mentis, son of wise Anchialus, and governs all the Taphians studious of navigation. This he said, but knew it was a goddess. These again withdrew to dance as an attraction of the song, and while their pleasures did the time prolong, the sable even descended, and did steep the lids of all men in desire of sleep. Telemachus into a room built high of his illustrious court, and to the eye of circular prospect to his bed ascended, and in his mind much weighty thought contended. Before him Euryclea, that well known all the observance of a handmaid's due, daughter of Opus Bisinorides, bore two bright torches, who did so much please Laertes in her prime, that for the price of 20 oxen he made merchandise of her rare beauties, and love's equal flame to her he felt, as to his nuptial dame. Yet never durst he mix with her in bed, so much the anger of his wife he fled. She, now grown old, to young Telemachus 2 torches bore, and was obsequious past all his other maids, and did apply her service to him from his infancy. His well-built chamber reached, she opened the door. He on his bed sat, the soft weeds he wore put off, and to the diligent old maid gave all, who, fitly, all in thick folds laid, and hung them on a beam pin near his bed, that round about was rich embroidered. Then made she haste forth from him, and did bring the door together with a silver ring, and by a string a bar to it did pull. He laid and covered well with curled wool, woven in silk quilts. All nights employed his mind about the task that Pallas had designed. And that is book 1. Rhyming verse, a beautiful Chapman version.